Hey everyone, I watched a couple episodes of Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, and I was debating on whether or not I want to bother doing videos on every episode of the show, and I don't think I will. I watched the 4 or 5 part premiere episodes, East Meets West. I watched a couple episodes I remembered liking, and while I still kind of sort of like those few episodes I watched, they definitely have problems, and unfortunately, I just don't really have that much to talk about. I could give some trivia, I could summarize the episodes, but I don't know, go watch Phalus's videos on it, because there isn't really a whole lot I could add to what he put forward. So, anyway, I'm going to do one video about Next Mutation to sum it up, and in the future, maybe I'll look deeper into it if I feel like it. Next Mutation was the live-action follow-up to the Ninja Turtles live-action movie trilogy. There was some confusion, apparently, as it was also promoted as a continuation or sequel to the 80s cartoon. What it was actually a mishmash of both. There is vague continuity between the show and the movies, mainly the subway set the Turtles live in and some overall aesthetic. Other elements are far more in line with the cartoon. Sound effects are one, though Next Mutation I think surpasses the cartoon in that regard. When Shredder shows up here, he has his movie backstory, but there's also a bunch of new stuff dumped in. He has a magic amulet, his scars from Splinter are in a different place, and he's alive, which is kind of weird. Then again, he survived a trash compactor and the collapsing dock, and they also add in that the magic amulet keeps him alive, so whatever. There's no Krang, oddly. It's unfortunate. Their dynamic was one of my favorite things in the old cartoon. This would have been a great place to introduce Krang into the live-action canon, but instead we got mostly original villains. Ancient Chinese vampires, a gorilla gangster, a goofy big game hunter, a mad scientist, and the main threat, dragon people. Dragon Lord, leader of the dragons, may have been inspired by Lord Dreg, a villain from the later seasons of the original cartoon. Dragon Lord's toy looks nothing like how he does in the show, at least not his face, leading me to wonder if there was some confusion behind the scenes on his final design. Another character who may have been inspired by a pre-existing one is Bone Steel the Hunter. The comics had a hunter character who shared similar quirks to him. For whatever reason, the 90s live-action TMNT entries always seem to try their best to ignore what fans would recognize. The original movie, I love the first movie, it's incredible, but I think one of the biggest issues with it, in terms of appealing to the fan base at the time, was that it was based more off the original comic book and not the cartoon. While the comic book is probably something like a lot of older adult fans would recognize, I don't know if too many little kids would recognize it, but then again, that was a gamble that paid off, because a lot of kids loved the movie. The sequel had 2 mutant henchmen for Shredder, but they're not Rocksteady and Bebop, they're Toka and Razor, whatever. The third film had them go back in time to Japan's past, but we don't meet Hamato Yoshi, Splinter's former owner. However, they do meet a little kid whose name is Yoshi, so I don't know, maybe that's supposed to be a ancestor, but then what's the significant connection? Whatever. And now this show throws away nearly every character that isn't the Turtles and Splinter. Speaking of characters, this show introduces one of the most controversial characters in the entire franchise, Venus de Milo, also known by the name Mei-Pei-Chi. Her story is that she was one of the turtles dropped into the ooze that turned the titular turtles into mutants. While the others were found by Splinter, she was carried away by a current to Chinatown, where she was adopted by a mystic who taught her magic. Her origin is similar to the character from the original cartoon Mondo Gecko. He was with the Turtles when they fell into the ooze, but was picked up by a man who taught him to be a delinquent for some reason. She's also similar to another 80s cartoon character, Mona Lisa. She was a lizard mutant who was originally conceptualized as a new turtle. She's also named after a work of art instead of an artist. Venus was absolutely hated by not only fans, but one of the creators as well. The other creator seemed neutral on her. She was outright forbidden to use for a while, but has since appeared in comics along with another female turtle. After watching the entire show, I didn't find her remarkable or unremarkable. She's fine. I think fans just didn't like the idea of another member being on the team, or they had problems with the overall tone and direction of Next Mutation, and since Venus is the most obvious different element, new, unique element, everything is projected onto her. Her name is strange and doesn't fit the naming scheme of the others. I guess that makes sense. They were named by Splinter after Renaissance artists, and she was named by some guy. Oh wait, he named her Mei-Pei Chi. The Turtles name her Venus de Milo, which isn't an artist, it's a sculpture. I guess I couldn't think of any female artists. This leads to another oddity with the show. There's no Casey or April. I'm assuming their actors from the movies weren't available, but then again, April herself was recast for the sequel, and Shredder was recast for this show. I've heard rumors that Venus was originally supposed to be April mutated, which I think that would have been a cool idea. The series has a big problem tonally. It's too silly, even compared to the old TMNT cartoon. Sometimes this works. One episode, Going Ape, is Raphael trapped in a house with enemies and a gorilla. Goofy stuff abounds, and while some of it is over the top and stupid, it's working towards the show's strengths. Another decent episode is The Guest. Splinter has a friend, Andre. He's a blind old man who Splinter feels safe around since he can't see he's a mutant rat. He gets evicted from his apartment, and Splinter invites him to stay with his family. The premise is fine, the execution is a bit more lacking. Andre is pretty cartoonishly foolish throughout the rest of the episode. One episode where the tone is a problem is Enemy of My Enemy. This one reintroduces Shredder. He's not very consistent. Sometimes he's depicted as a threat, other times he's so weak he gets overpowered by a few random bullies in an alley. Another episode where the tone works against it is The Good Dragon. A minion of Dragon Lord befriends Venus and wants to defect. Again, it's a good premise, but it quickly devolves into cartoonish stunts and never has repercussions in future episodes. The show ends on a cliffhanger, no resolution for any of the characters or storylines. The Turtles of this incarnation made a guest appearance in Power Rangers in Space. This team-up is probably better remembered than the show itself. Next Mutation came and went, and once the 2003 4Kids cartoon came out, it was essentially forgotten, helped along by the rule against using Venus. More Ninja Turtles cartoons would come, a sequel to the 2003 series called Fast Forward, a CGI animated theatrical movie simply titled TMNT, and in 2012, a new CGI cartoon on Nickelodeon. A few years later, we got two more theatrical live-action Ninja Turtles movies, but they were completely separate from the old trilogy. After those, in the Nickelodeon show, came Rise of the TMNT, a highly stylized 2D cartoon, then another animated theatrical film, Mutant Mayhem. During all this, there were various comics with their own stories going on. Next Mutation doesn't have much of a legacy. Venus popped up in a couple of comics, and there's occasionally vague references. Despite the unpopularity of the series, there are even a few notable fan works. One last funny thing to note, when Saban acquired Next Mutation from Disney along with Power Rangers and some related shows, Saban offered the show to Mirage, but they said, keep it. That's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.
Gorillas hate bats!
I don't know what's going on. I'm sure enjoying myself.
What is happening here?
I love underwear!